All right, and I believe we're alive.
Thanks, Jan. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining another Product People community event. For everyone that's new, welcome to the Product People community event. And for anyone that's returning, welcome back. We really hope that tonight will be a really great session for you that'll make you think a little bit differently about things. I'm particularly excited about what we're going to be discussing today because, and I think anyone in Product People would be as well, because coaching and teaching is such a big part of all of our roles, and it's kind of been a bit of a game changer for me in my career personally. So I'm very excited to see what Alex is going to be sharing with us today. So Alex Bleau is going to be our speaker. He works at One or E-on, which is like the technology. They build technology for sustainable energy and for energy transitions. And he's also a coach himself. So I'm very excited to see what he will be sharing with us. But just very quickly about myself. So my name's Stefan. My picture at the background is a little bit of a lie because I moved from Cape Town about 3 weeks ago to Berlin. So I'm in Berlin right now, but I'm originally from Cape Town. And you can see quickly just some of the experiences that I've had, but I'm not going to go into detail around that. And then Product People. So we love, helping companies to deliver and discover great products. We onboard fast, we align teams, and we love to deliver results as quickly as we can and get down and dirty with all the unglamorous hands-on work of a product manager, product ops, product leader. And we generally do that on a 3+ month basis when someone is off on parental leave, or whether there's like a gap between hiring or any other situations that might occur where you need a product manager or product leader or product ops. And then just before we start going into the talk that we're going to have today, just a little bit of an icebreaker, just to get your mind into the space. We are going to ask you 2 questions. So if you're on LinkedIn, you're going to probably right about now see a poll coming up that you can vote on. And if you're on any of our other platforms, you can just give your answers in the comment section. So the first question is, how often do you take time to think about the way that you are thinking? And when I saw this question just before the session, I was like, I can't remember when last I actually thought about the way that I was thinking. I think you generally tend to do that a little bit more in your personal life, or I tend to, but I don't know when last I've actually thought about how I think about work and about people that I work with and how I think about things that have happened during the day. So I'm very curious to see how other people think about that. And then the second question is, as leaders, how often do you create the space for your direct reports to reflect on their actions and the consequences of those actions? And this is also like a really like looking in the mirror with this question when you see it, because some of us have direct reports and all of us probably are someone's direct report. And I've had some learnings in the past where my manager's also been like, okay, cool. So let's sit and think about what happened here. How have you contributed to this? And, how have you contributed to the consequences, and where did all of that come from? And it was really very helpful for me to do that. So as a leader myself, I would also want to build that into my processes a little bit more, but I wouldn't honestly be able to see that I do that weekly at this stage. So I'm looking forward to see what everyone else is saying. Cool. So we got some answers here. So it looks like there's actually 50% of the people on this Zoom call, at least, say that they think about the way that they're thinking weekly. And then 25% say monthly and 25% quarterly or less. I might be in that last bucket myself. And then the second question is, as leaders, how often do you create the space for your direct reports to reflect on their actions and the consequences of those actions? Again, 50% here said weekly, and 25 said monthly, and 25 said quarterly or less. Yeah, so that's really interesting. And I wonder if that will change how you present on it, Alex, based on the people's answers. But without any further ado, I'll be handing over to Alex, who'll do a little bit of a better introduction of himself that I could do. But yeah, I'll be handing over to you, Alex, and you can share your screen.
All right. Hey, everyone. Let me just get on with the technicals, and then we can get going, and hopefully, all right. It didn't fail this time around. We were mixing screens. So hey, thanks for having me, product people, and thanks everyone for joining today. Hopefully the session will be useful for you. I have to admit, contrary to one-on-one sessions where I'm quite comfortable, when I saw 94 people, that was like 60 more people than I expected. So let's hopefully, I'm hoping that this session will be useful and that the examples that I bring can help you in some way to improve the way that you care and support the people that are in your charge. Right, a bit about myself. So first of all, I'm a product manager. I have some other functions, but I truly want to be constantly in the flow of things and lead or work with the team, either direct team, which gives me a kick out of actually succeeding on building a successful product and actually finding a match with potential users, or leader in some cases in the past, and currently where I also have other product managers in my care. I've had the chance to work on various industries, and I've actually did this on purpose to try and get as much diversity and ways of building product as there's no kind of silver bullet or golden rule. And so far, the different perspectives have helped, and it also played a big part for me in how I also coach. Yeah, I'm also a trainer, and some people call me torturer, and I also kind of self-proclaim just because I'm generally very brutal or very direct in the feedback. And somehow I've found a dedicated clientele that actually wants this. And so with some clients, they're also like, hey, we would like to go again for the torture package. So that's a thing. It's no torture, no actual torture. It's just the way of doing. Obviously, very relevant for this session. I'm also a coach. I didn't start as an official coach, and I think the definition or what it consists varies from person to person. I actually started mentoring and supporting people in my team and other product managers within Trivago. This was 2016, 2017. And then 2 years ago, I also did a formal training on coaching from Thoughtsmiths, which is also in Cape Town, South Africa. So Stefan, it's like you were close by to the company that I did the training with. Definitely recommend them. And yeah, I've coached them, coaching product managers, product leaders, and in some cases, early startup founders. And yeah, I do bow ties. So I came up with a lot of bow ties from Romania. And recently I'm doing Lego bow ties, and also like my obsession, you can see it in the back with all the Lego bow ties. And I do fancy Fridays because, I mean, a lot of the companies right now do casual everydays. So this is where I kind of vent the bows. Yeah, that's enough on this. So what I want to talk about today, first, why coaching, and because coaching mindset comes from the coaching perspective, and why is it so relevant now, and why am I speaking about this? What are value and pitfalls? So what value does it actually bring in this relationship between you as a product leader or product manager and your team or your direct reports? And then how do I start? So what are easy steps to start this? And yeah, I'll be going through some examples, and hopefully I answer some of the questions that you came with today. If not, we can answer them afterwards. So here we go. Why coaching? The reason why actually I started coaching, and I think it was a mix of mentoring and coaching in the last years, and it's become more frequent also in my role. So not just on, let's say, specific coaching calls with externals, is that there's a constant expectation on all product managers and product teams, right, to be autonomous and empowered. And there's a lot of books and a lot of people that are supporting this. And in many cases, the teams also want this as well. But wanting that from both sides and actually getting there to a state where they're truly autonomous and empowered is not actually that easily attained, right? We want product managers and teams to be able to deal with uncertainty, and this is the environment that we live in. So there's nothing. I usually compare this with the fog of war in strategy games, where you're given a map and some resources at the start, and you're like, good luck exploring. And this is the same with building a product, right? We have this fog of war, and we're trying to kind of make sense of what's around us, and hopefully we find the enemy camp before they do, and the extra resources, right? And we win on this space. And we expect this, that product managers and product teams are able to deal with this uncertainty in all of the decisions and all of the situations that they fall into, right? Ideally as good, if not better than we would, right? But arguably without calling us every second minute to say, okay, like what do we do now, or being freezing on the spot, right? And then last but not least, right? Like ideally we want people that become thinkers and leaders in their own right and not just doers, as uncomfortable as that might seem, right? We want them to, I express this as the ideal of a successful product manager, right, is that they make themselves as close to redundant as possible, right? So the team, whatever they did with the team, right, the team can run on their own quite successfully, right? And it's the result of this work together with the team. So that's the expectation that I see in towards me in most cases, right? And also on other product people. And then we also have the context in which we're playing, right? Which is quite a fast-paced environment. So right now, even on hardware products, right, there's incredible pressure to build and ship as fast as possible, to validate assumptions as fast as possible. And if you don't do it, then somebody else will, or a competing team will pick it up. There's lots of decisions to be made where, as a product leader and even as a product manager, sometimes I will not be there. Right, and then we expect, okay, the decisions should be made as equally good, right, or as good as possible as if we were there. I think I did once a calculation just on my own, and we ended up that within a week we have like somewhere in the thousands of decisions, and we're not talking about major product decisions here. We're also talking about small decisions. Are we going to split this pull request? Are we going to also fix all the bugs or not, right? Are we going to accept this extra feature in place, right? These are all tiny decisions that most of the time the team gets hit with, the product managers get hit with, right? We don't see them as product leaders, right? We cannot be there all the time, and that's beyond the purpose of the relationship. And yet with all of this, right, so with all of the actions and the context, we have little time to reflect on learning and actions. Sometimes the feedback is also that we have little time to sit with the whiteboard, right, and think, okay, what's coming, what's the future? So we struggle to kind of carve that time out, that time into the calendar. Never mind time to reflect on what did we do and what did that do to the product direction or the strategy. And that's quite important, because it's exactly that thinking, that mindset that us as product managers go into every day and work with the team, that shapes everything that we do, from decisions, from what we focus on and what we don't focus on. So ideally, we would have time to sharpen this proverbial axe before we go cutting. So we have that context, and we have the expectation. Why a coaching mindset, and how does this play into being a solution or a good approach to kind of handle these features? Well, going to just the first word, right? Coaching. It is meant to create a safe space for opening up and for growth. This is one of the key principles of coaching, right? To have a space for the person that we're coaching. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be a one-on-one. It can also be somebody coming and talking in the hallway, or grabbing us for a question, right? And then we say, okay, let's go and talk somewhere. But creating this safe space where, okay, hey, we will talk about this, and I won't be giving solutions, but I'll be asking questions, right? It sets a different tone. And this tone and this safety actually enables or opens people up to say, okay, I feel like I can talk about these things and won't be judged, right? Because this is not the let's say the stance that the coach, so to speak, or us as coaches took in this instance. Coaching assumes the coachee knows more about their problem. This is, I think, one of the most controversial points, or at least was for me, because we generally, especially when we're training or supporting people that are new in the role, right? Especially at the start, we're going to offload a lot of knowledge that they need in order to do their job and to get up to speed. And then what I learned the hard way, also through coaching and through some of the coaching sessions, that you need to focus and assume that the problem, the problem that the coachee has, right, they also have most of the context about it. And I don't mean that, hey, I know about, let's say I don't know, I'm a product manager for a search form on a website or on a product, right? It doesn't mean that I don't know more about the search form than they do. There are situations where I probably did a handover exactly on that topic, but they are the ones that know more about where they land with the issue. They know their biases, their constraints, right? I might be a very comfortable extrovert and I have no problem going to the stakeholder and demanding that they stop scope creeping. I'm just giving an example here, right? But in their case, that not might be the same situation, right? They might not be comfortable. They might not have developed the same relationship with them. They might have completely different assumptions. And this holds even more true, and this is where I learned the best is also in trainings, where I go, for example, and I can hold a training, or I support on moderation on, let's say, outcomes, right, or OKRs. That's okay to hold the training and to explain this is how it's supposed to look like, and this might not exactly be an outcome, but it's a different thing for me to start defining goals for them, because I have, even if they hold a 1 week session with all of the knowledge of the company, I'll still probably only know 1 to 5% about what they're going through, right? And the same is for the situation, right? It's the coachee that knows more about their problem, and it's why, and I'll get to this a bit later on, we should not, when we're approaching our direct reports, right, from a coaching perspective, to not focus on the problem, right? They're focusing on the problem. We should not focus on the problem. And last, coaching is an enabler to both strengthen values and challenge biases. And this is so important. Coming back to the biases and the values that we have are the ones that dictate our actions, right? If I have a bias when recruiting, I'm going to favor certain people, right, rather than others, based on these either hidden or hopefully biases that I'm aware of. And because of the safety that I mentioned, right, the safe space, people open up, and they will open up much more about the values that they have and the biases that they have. And sometimes it might be indirect, so they might mention a word more times, right? They might actually just come back to a certain person. They might stress the same thing over and over. But generally, these are areas where it's the coaching mindset allows them to come forward, right, and through questions, or through sometimes even through silence, right, to let them come out and say, oh yeah, what value actually is going against you acting on this? And then they stop, like, I never thought that it might be a value. Well, I value eco-friendly approaches, so I don't agree with the plastic solution, right? And suddenly it clicks, right? But from their perspective, it never clicked that way. So value versus pitfalls. What is the value that we actually get for us as product leaders, coaching, right? And for the people that we're adopting this mindset for. So I call them coaches, right? They are our direct reports or also full teams. And then what are the pitfalls? On the value side, coachee is challenged with new perspectives, and I can give an example here. And this is the perspective here. You can view it as it's not my quote or description. It's from ThoughtSmiths, from one of the coaches there. It's mental highways, right? So we all have mental highways that we use to kind of process things and to view the world. And sometimes through self-reflection or through coaching or through an aha moment, right, we get a new perspective, a new mental highway that we never had before on viewing not only that problem, but potentially new ones. I used to work at Trivago for quite a few years, and we did a lot of A/B tests and experiments. And so, like, we did quite a lot for validating both qualitative assumptions and then just doing quantitative tests to see to validate certain assumptions. And we had quite a talented engineering team, and I was lucky to work with quite talented engineers. But for some particular reason, we had 1 or 2 engineers that would not ship fast enough. And it's not that we wanted to, like, okay, come on, let's go. It's just that everybody agreed that we could merge an experiment and run it as is, and then we wouldn't, right? So everybody except them agreed, hey, it's ready. and yet it wasn't there. And so nobody mentioned why, right? They said like, okay, it was very sluggish. So after one or two of these incidents, right, I had a one-on-one with one of these people, right? And I tried to understand what about this, right, is problematic and what is exactly blocking, because there were like 2 or 3 completely different experiments that we were delaying. And it turns out that the answer that they gave was that, well, I don't want to ship something that will lose value or will lose money for the company. And this is very good feeling to have, as most of the experiments, right, like 7 out of 10 did not qualify. And in general, if they were underperforming, you would actually lose money indirectly, right? Less people would convert, they wouldn't book as much, and so on, right? And so it took that session to actually discuss and try and change perspectives from we are losing money to we are spending money for learning. And it would have been easy to just tell him or her that, right? But what we instead did is I tried to ask, okay, let's assume that you're in the place of Trivago, right? And you wanted to do these experiments. What is the reason behind doing these experiments, right? And we went through performance and, okay, what's behind the performance? What is behind that, right? What's before that? Well, learning. Okay, so why do you think everyone else is okay with spending this money for these experiments? And so we got to this conclusion and to this perspective that we're not seeing beyond up until a certain point, right? Like there's multi-million experiments in negative that we turn off immediately. But for most of the other experiments, right, we came to a new perspective where we're investing to get learning, and up until a certain point, right, this is an assumed cost, right? And this unblocked not only him, but it also unblocked the whole team for a lot of other experiments. Again, excluding the multi-million dollar losses, right? The aha moments, second, the aha moments and reflections lead to long-term learnings. It's easy in mentoring or in shadowing, right, to just tell the person like, hey, you need to do it like this because otherwise it won't convert. And you might be speaking from experience and from knowledge, and you might be right. Yeah, like there's no doubt. You probably bring in the experience to kind of back that up. And they will probably do it, and it will be implemented, and it's okay. What's doubtful is whether that learning will be carried by that person after this incident, right? And for short term, it might work for very, very fast iterations or very fast changes and movements, right? And resolution, and sometimes this is needed. But if you want to have long-term learnings, right, these mental highways or new perspectives that they can now use for any type of this problem, right, you want to actually not give the solution and actually go into coaching and ask, what about this do you think is wrong? What makes you hesitate, right? What is it that holds you back on this? It strengthens, and one example here is that I've worked quite a bit with QA, right? And there's critical bugs, and also in B2C, right? There's in B2B, there's all of the bugs are mostly critical bugs, depending on who's being bothered by it, right? But in B2C, it's not the case, and so you have really critical bugs like, I don't know, coming back to a search engine, right? Hey, we cannot search for a major capital on the country because we deleted it from the database. Or, hey, somebody's going to sue us if we don't remove this very copyrighted point of interest, right? So that's very critical, right? But then you have very light bugs like, hey, we don't support, I don't know, the Palm Trio mobile phone 17 years after it went out of business, right? And so when you have the data to back it up, right, what I did generally is I challenged on all of the bugs that we were fixing to try and understand in between features and bugs and any changes that we wanted to do or refactoring, right, what is actually the most important thing. And I had the luck and benefit to also have a teaching moment in that I was paired with a very diligent QA engineer that wanted to fix all of the bugs, at least at the start. And so I started, what about this bug makes it more important than the other bugs? So we just went into these series of questions, right? And I wouldn't do this when we didn't have time, but you generally have 5 or 10 minutes to try and have this discussion. And so I kept asking this, and I kept challenging. And at one point in time, it's like 4 or 5 months later after this tango between me and him, where I just happened to be coming to the team area, and there was a stakeholder there that demanded that we fix something instead of a feature. And sure enough, the QA engineer was asking, well, what about this bug that you want so badly fixed? Do you actually feel is more important than everything else we have on the plate, right? So this actually led not only to him learning and the discussions that we had to also improve because we had less arguments, but also for him to kind of carry this learning forward. Moving on, it strengthens the relationship between coach and coachee. This is one of the few sessions, and I've been a lead and done mistakes as a lead, and I've also had plenty of leads that I reported to. And unfortunately, I generally tended to have, I hope you were luckier, the kind that would inevitably focus on the work and not that much on the actual session of one-on-ones, like, okay, what do you want to talk about, right? It was most of the time we had to redo it, or we had half. And when you go into this coaching mindset from the start, you're asking questions, so you're listening and you're on the receiving end. And you have the chance to actually kind of see not only what the person is asking about, but from which perspective, where their blockers are. So you get to know the person that you're working with better, right? But also on the other side, the coachee feels, okay, I can trust Alex because whenever I go and we have one of these sessions, I'm not sure what he's doing in that session, but he only asks me questions. It's mildly annoying, but at least, right, like he's not judging me in those sessions, and I can actually share. And in the end, I come up with the solutions. So I like it, right? And even if the relationship, let's say, doesn't deepen on a particular topic, that feeling of safety definitely gets developed over time, right, with iteration. And last but not least, and I kind of touched on this, it stimulates paying forward and self-reflection. So one, the paying forward, meaning that they start applying the same learning and the same perspective. And not only that, but we generally try and, if we learn how to use a hammer, right, then suddenly, oh, maybe this is also a nail. Let me use the hammer on this, right? So similar to the things and the perspectives that they get in the coaching sessions, or in these, it can be a 5-minute or a 15-minute coaching session, right, or a coaching moment. They learn to apply it as well in other situations and try to do the same. And if you're a product leader and you're coaching product managers and you're teaching them this is extremely valuable, because product managers in turn influence their team on a daily basis, right? So it's quite a broad reach and broad impact that you're having by adopting this attitude with your direct reports. And self-reflection, because at some point you start asking the same question before you even go to discuss with the person, right? So, hey, I want, coming back to the bug example, right? Like I want to actually forward this bug to the engineering team because Alex is not here. But wait, what actually is this more important than what is on the backlog? Let me check. Or what we have committed in the sprint. Let me check. Okay, it's not. Okay, I'll just ask the team whether they have time, right? So this is also another added value. And now we get to pitfalls, because coming back to said hammer, and also the problems that occur on this area. So one, which is a big one, and you really have to be comfortable about this, you can end up in conflicts of interest, particularly when you're the coach. If you really need to get into that mindset when you say, okay, now I'm in coaching, right? It can come into conflict with you as a direct lead of these reports, because obviously you have business interests and business goals, and they can run hand in hand, and most of the times they will, right? But when you're in this coaching mindset, you actually have to be open and non-judgmental in order to make it work, right? Otherwise, that safe space is not created. And this means that at least for that duration, right? Hey, look, I was in coaching mindset up until now, and we've ended this like discussion, but now let me speak from Alex as a direct lead, right? I would prefer that we do not do this, right? Or here are my thoughts, right? So I keep them separate, but you definitely have conflict of interest, and what you don't want, you can have conflicts of interest, and what you don't want is that these get mixed, right? Because you lose kind of the value of both, or at least the coaching side. The urge to skip coaching and give advice never fades, and this is up to you to kind of find the middle ground and the sweet spot of when are we in a rush and when do we need to actually go into, let's just say how to do it and do it, and when do I believe that this has potential for a long-term learning that will impact a lot of decisions for this person, and we go into a coaching. And the approach behind coaching mindset might frustrate some. I've had people that asked and had the luxury to say, like, do you want coaching or mentoring? So this was actual sessions, right? And they started to say, like, no, I think coaching sounds good and I really want coaching. And then mid session is like, but what would you do, right? And this is such a fallacy. Like, even if I tell you what, especially when coaching somebody from even outside the company and even outside of your team, there's whatever worked for me with my team, with my context, with my attitude, with my Lego bow tie, right, has like 90% chance that will not work the same way for anyone else, right? And even with this disclaimer, there's some people that say, but I want to see what you would do, right? Whether it's for confirmation of what they had in mind, which is sometimes the case, or because they want to see the perspective, a difference of perspective in that way, right? They sometimes go to that, right? And they insist on that. And if you don't give them that, they might be frustrated, right? Like, why do you keep asking questions? It might even come off as avoiding, right? To help. It's like Alex doesn't want to help. Like he generally just asks questions and tries to avoid it. I think he has something against me, right? So yeah, those are some of the pitfalls that I came against, and you might come against as well. Yeah. How do I start? So how do I get started with actually adopting this coaching mindset? 3 easy steps. It really depends on your approach. First, very important, listen with the intent to understand and not to respond. This is also when you're geared into providing solutions, right, as the lead, the product lead, right, or helping out teams. And this is also coming from very positive attitude and mindset, right? I want to help my team. You might listen, and in the meantime, the monkey in your head already thinks of like, okay, so he said that, so this is what I'm going to say next, right? And unfortunately, that monkey in the head can only do one thing, right? So either they listen to what is being said, right? Or they're thinking about what they're gonna say next, right? So you really, the way that you create the space for yourself to be a good coach, right, or have a good coaching attitude, is that you listen with the intent to understand. And this opens up a lot of things, because a lot of the communication that happens does not happen verbally, and you start picking up. And when you're actually present and you allow yourself to be present in the session or in this discussion, right, you start seeing which words they focus on more, what they said, what they didn't say, right? What did they omit that should have been there? What body language is there? Does it make sense with what they've said? Does it go against what they said, right? I was so excited. Yeah, like things like this, you catch on, right? And this gives you the fuel to say, like, okay, how you just said you were excited, right? Like, what about that didn't feel natural with you, right? And you can continue on that discussion and go deeper into what exactly is the issue in the session. This doesn't work if your monkey is like, I'm going to tell him this and I'm going to tell him that, and this is going to be so much fun. Second perspective is, are you stealing their learning? This was something that for me worked quite well. It's situations where somebody comes to you and says, like, could you help me with this, right? Or what do you think about this part? And the easy exit here would be, well, I think this is good. You can go and ship it. It looks quite great, right? Or, hey, I think they did a mistake here, and it's done, right? Like, you've washed your hands. What you did is you stole the learning from that person. If that person has never done this before and you have the time, right, you could have spent that time to actually ask a few questions and make them think about it and reflect on it, right, and come to their own conclusions, which might actually be the correct ones, or challenge these conclusions, right, if applicable. But if we just go and directly kind of tell them, they will know, again, for the moment. They might know for a few more sessions. It's not guaranteed that they have that new perspective, a new mental highway there. And one example on this, and is actually from my son, and he's kind of my coach. I just don't like to tell him that, because then he would charge me an arm and a leg. He at one point we bought him a new bike, and we made a mistake actually we didn't make a mistake in the order. The shipping company made a mistake and sent a bike that was one size larger. And so we were on the street, and my son was drooling over the bike because it was really pretty, but then he was crying over the bike because he seemed like he couldn't ride it. And we sat down on the sidewalk, right? And we tried to discuss about this. And I knew that because I had this before, right? Like when you had a bigger bike, I don't know about you, but in my home country, I've had kids that were 7 or 8 years old riding a full frame adult bike, and what they would do is they would not sit over the horizontal frame, right? They would put their legs somehow in the triangle in between, right, and just kind of ride it like that. But it didn't matter because they had an adult bike and they could ride it, and they made it work, right? So I knew that a lot was possible with bikes, and I could have just found the solution then, and that was done. Instead, we went into discussion and said, okay, what about this makes you stop or prevent you from riding the bike? And we went to, okay, well, he said, I cannot get on the bike. And I asked, like, what about it prevents you? Well, I would need something to kind of be higher so that I can get over this. Okay, is there anything around you? Do you need to be taller, or is there anything around you that could help? And so he actually started looking around. And after, I'll be honest, after 10 minutes of him looking around the whole neighborhood, I said, like, let's go back and focus on the sidewalk. And sure enough, he's like, well, I could use a sidewalk. Like, okay, what else is scary? Well, how am I going to stop? Because I'm bigger, the bike is bigger than me. So I stop and I'm going to fall on the side. And I frankly don't want to injure my legs. And like, well, how did you get on? Like, well, I'll get on the sidewalk. Well, could you use something else or something similar to get off? Well, I could stop maybe next to, we had this concrete fence, right? And it's like, I can stop next to that. It's like, oh, great, let's try that. And he was amazed by this, right? And he was so excited, and he managed to ride his bike and go beyond this blocker. But what actually helped in the end is that he took that learning and then used it also forward on other topics, right? So that learning is not just for the moment. He actually used it to also teach another kid to do the same. He applied this height. Hey, I could use something to increase my height also for getting to other stuff, right? So it really applies to a lot of topics. So don't steal their learnings, and see, is this a moment where I need to just tell, or is this a moment where I need to coach and let them learn? And yeah, the coachee focuses on their problem. You focus on their thinking. And I'll go get quicker on this because I've seen the time now. And Stefan's not saying anything like, hey, Alex, like, so yeah, this is not something, this is the simplest explanation of coaching mindset. And it's not from me. I learned it through, again, the coaching training, right? But I think it's the simplest method. And it's really great to kind of remember the coachee focuses on their problem. And this is one of the reasons why they say that, hey, the coach doesn't really need to know the problem itself. It helps when you know the context of the problem, right? So this is why you have product coaches for product managers, right? Because we are in the same industry. But while they focus on their problem, right, you need to focus on their thinking about the problem, right? So, hey, like you see them, it's like a game designer, right? Like they're not having the fun in the game, right? They're observing and trying to analyze how the person is having fun in the game. It's the same here, right? How are they thinking about this problem? How are they not thinking about the problem, right? What perspective are they missing in there, right? And the questions follow that. So yeah, key takeaways. Adopt a coaching mindset to help your team grow and actually be resilient in the face of all of this uncertainty, right? To the best of their ability, right? But grow them into actual kind of confident in their own thinking and approach. Both sides get value, but watch out for the pitfalls. And you can get started with small, consistent steps. And yeah, I'll leave you with this. Like, I think this initially was about a quote on what happens if we don't develop our employees, right? But it's the same, right? Like, what do we do if we coach our team and they leave, right? Or product managers. And the counter to that is obviously, well, what do we do if we don't coach them and they stay, right? So consider about the coaching approach to developing both the team that you're leading and also the relationship that you have with them. And with that, I would like to thank you. And yeah, we can open to questions and I can stop the sharing. Maybe.
Thanks, Alex. That was really great. And I know I didn't stop you while you were presenting because I was just too into it myself. So I didn't want to stop you at all. But yeah, everyone, so we're opening up Q&A right now. So on whatever platform you are on, you can send your questions through while I'm just going to quickly give us some time to think about questions. And if you're on Zoom and you'd want to, put your hand up and unmute yourself and ask a question directly to Alex, you can also do that. That'll be really cool as well. So just while we think about our questions, just, going through some use cases when product people can be of benefit. So it's when we are the interim product manager. So when someone as in the product organization within your company is going on parental leave, or there's this gap between someone that left and you're trying to get someone, or there's a new product and you want to, get a product manager in quickly and to start delivering some results. That's one of the use cases. Also, when you need a product coach or a consultant, and product ops and things like that. So product leader, product manager, product ops. And then also if you need some product discovery, helping you to get into that exercise as well. Those are the use cases that we're most good at, I think, most happy to do as well. What we're not doing, so we're not recruiters, so we don't source candidates like this for other companies. We're not a freelance marketplace, so all of the people that work at Product People are employees of Product People, and Product People then has the contracts with the other businesses, and we are then the assets of the company that then go to that company and help out. And we're not a development or design agency, so all of us are product managers. And then the other people that are part of the team are helping to keep the boat afloat in like business development and sales and social media and things like that. But we don't do development and design for outside. And then some of our B2C clients, you can see some of their logos and names here. I'm not going to read through every one, but I also don't want to just mention two or so. And then the B2B clients, these are also some of the clients that we've worked with that we're very proud to have worked with. And just some positive feedback that is very much in line with, in the beginning, what I said about, loving to onboard quickly and deliver results and, hands-on, unglamorous work. So if you read through this, you'll also see that really relates to what we aim to achieve as well. And then just some Product People stats. So we have 70 plus clients from Series A startups to publicly listed companies, and we've supported 200 cross-functional teams so far. We're about 40 product leaders and product managers, and something that's really cool is 60% of the team are women, or people who identify as women, and 66% of them are in leadership. So that's a really cool stat that we're very proud of as well. And this is our team. So that little picture there at the bottom, that could be you. If you wanted to join Product People, then you can also apply. We're also looking for people with sales background. So, if you that's something that really excites you, you can also come and apply and be part of the team here. Okay, but now I'm gonna see if we have some questions. So there's one that came through from Forrestein Itai on YouTube. And the question was, how do you coach the upper management?
I think I've been mentioning coaching, right, in the coaching mindset very specifically, right? But most of the time I don't mention to someone, hey, we're entering in a coaching discussion, right? Especially when you have like 5 or 10 minutes. It's my choice of how to interact in communication and can be something like that. If we go on the official route to say like, I want to coach someone, right? Then there's a contract and a discussion, right? And we tell them, hey, you cannot come into the session with drugs and or tell me about a crime you did, right? Because that's beyond kind of confidentiality of the coaching session. When it comes to management, I assume this question comes from the perspective of both me and the manager are working in the same company, right? And it's not an external client that says, I want to be coached by you, right? So in this case, I think it's called managing up rather than coaching, right? But I generally ask my direct report a lot of questions on topics, and it's not always from a coaching perspective, but in some topics the questions make sense, right? So what exactly about this do you consider important, right? I'm trying to grasp the perspectives of the manager to try and understand, okay, how does this affect what he's bringing or she's bringing forward in terms of priority, right? It might not work the same way as you coaching somebody that is your direct report, right? But you can definitely use questions, right? And let's say a coaching approach to instead surface perspectives on this from this person, right? However, again, it might be like that they come and discuss with you, and you're starting to ask questions, and at some point they're like, "Can you just please answer the question?" So it really depends, right? In these situations, if you really need, I'll end with that. If you really need to break through with a manager on a particular topic, right? Nothing cures that like a good, decent one-on-one where you lay it out very maturely, assuming that this person is also mature, right, in communication. And you say, hey, look, like, I want to work with you. But for example, you are very excited and go on like 30 different tangents. And I'm also excited and go on 30 different tangents, and our meetings never end, right? So I'm going to put an agenda, and I hope this is for you, this is okay for you, but I would also like to understand what's behind that excitement, right? How do you actually filter any of it, right? Like, can we talk about this, right? Coaching mindset also has this advantage, not from management, but when you have your direct reports, is that naturally, sometimes these direct reports will have sessions with you, or they come to you with the topic, right? So from the start, they're invested that they want to solve the problem that they're dealing with, right? This might not be the case with your manager. He just wants to kind of solve something in the sense of, let's get this done or out the road. It really depends, right? Maybe feel free to reach out with more details. If this didn't really answer your question, more than happy to kind of dive into it. I'm a sucker for interesting topics like this.
Cool, thanks, Alex. And then a question that I've been thinking about, and you've pretty much alluded to that a little bit now as well, but you were talking about your direct reports and coaching them. Do you think that you will have the bigger impact coaching someone that's a direct report to you than someone that's not a direct report to you? Or do you think it doesn't really matter?
I think that is not the defining criteria, right? So I think what you're referring to is if the person comes and they want to solve their problem, right? Mm-hmm. That is for me the defining factor, right? So if they're open and say, hey, I have a problem, I want to solve it, I believe you're the one to solve it, right? That is a great opportunity for me to think, well, I'm glad you believe that, but I'm not going to give you the solution. And instead, I'm going to show you that you have the perspectives, or you can find the perspectives, right, to come to the answer, whether it's an uncomfortable answer or not, right? That's how it works. So it could be a manager, it could be the CEO coming and seeing, hey, look, I never knew we were working on this, right? It's like, I'm perplexed. And like, what about it makes you perplexed? Like, well, because I've had this problem that I was dealing with. Oh, let's go to a room. I'm more than happy and curious to kind of talk about this, right? I didn't mention coaching in anything. And sometimes it's like saying, hey, we're doing goals with like, we're doing outcomes instead of goals, right? Like that's perceived in one way. And you say like, we're doing OKRs. You can just hear the in the background, like sometimes like, oh man, OKRs, right? But essentially like both cases, you want to focus on outcomes. Sometimes not saying that it's coaching, right? Sometimes saying that it's coaching might actually put the person on guard, right? Which is exactly the last thing you want to do to create a space where they open up.
Okay, and that also leads me to my next question, which was, what would you say is the top, like number one way that you can create that safe space that you mentioned previously in your slide when you want to do coaching, even though you're not calling it coaching maybe in that moment? And what would be the top way that you think you kind of break that down, like not create that space to make it safe?
Yeah. So Sometimes the answer is quite simple. So I go basic, and at the start of the session I say like as usual, right? Like one question that I like is hey, before we go into it, right? Like, is there anything keeping you away from being fully present in your own session, right? In this discussion. And sometimes there are things, right, that you need to kind of either leave at the door, metaphorically, right, or actually discuss before you're able to kind of let go of this, right? And after that, what I do is I just remind them like, hey, as usual, apart from, I don't know, illegal crimes and stuff like that, right? Like this will be confidential, right? And I will be in a coaching perspective, and I go very direct, right? And I won't be offering solutions, right? And this is just for you and you alone, right? And I'm just a sounding board, right? And we'll be supporting you on whatever you want to get from this session, right? And that sets things clear, right? What breaks it, let's say that we did this, right? What breaks it, for example, in the middle is when you have a conflict of interest, or when you're not asking questions to help them view new perspectives, but you're asking questions in a way to get them to the answer that you want them to get to, right? So like, I know that this is the answer, so I'm just going to keep poking and asking Alex questions until he realizes what I want to show him, right? That from the start breaks trust. And this, like, people will feel this, right? Like, why are you pushing on this, right? I feel like I'm being judged, right? So instant break, right? And puts you on the defensive. So that would be my answer there.
You know, that's a really, like, especially the what breaks it down, it's really great, because I think sometimes, like, I know I can sometimes almost be tempted, kind of like lure you in a direction with my questions, and that breaks it down.
Yeah.
And then we have a question from Daniel on Zoom. He said, thank you for the talk. One question: how can a product leader resolve conflicts of interest between coaching his team or her team, for example, being non-judgmental and being responsible for the team's results?
Yeah. So again, one, I would clearly delimit it and say, hey, I'm now in, like, for me in one-on-ones, I generally say, hey, this is a coaching discussion, and I generally try and keep the one-on-ones that I do in a coaching perspective. And I actually say, like, look, this is me as a coach. I'm here to support you, right? And it's also for me, right? Like, hey, I'm here as a coach. I'm not here as Alex, the lead, when it was the case, right? And after that, I could have a coaching session, right? And after that, right, like I do have some disclaimers, right? When I'm coaching my direct reports, right, the confidentiality part, right, stays between the two of us, but obviously I know, right? So to some extent, if there are topics that they cannot discuss with me, I generally encourage them, please find someone else, right? And this is how, for example, Trivago solved it, that they had talent leads. This is what the role was called, right? And it was essentially a coach that was not your direct business lead, right, or business related lead, to kind of remove this blocker. It worked to some extent. It doesn't work to others. Like it breaks in areas, but I would just separate. And for me at least, right, this was simple. I said, like, I'm in coaching mode right now. Yeah, okay. And after that, when I'm out of that session, I say, like, look, we need to talk about something. It's not immediately after, like, let's go back in the room. Now I'm Alex, the boss. God, that's a horrible word for product management. But never attained anyway. But I generally say, like, look, we need to talk, right? And this is, except for those sessions, right? Like, I'm Alex, the lead, and I say we need to achieve this as a team, right? So this is how it is separated. It's never going to be clean, right? Like, there's never a ideal prioritization. There's never an ideal goal, right? And there's never an ideal split between these two roles, right? So you have to be kind of honest with yourself and with them. When you mess up, they say, like, yeah, I mixed them up. That was not intended, right? But this is the reality that I'm living right now, right? And or I will not do this again, right? And just adapt, right? Sorry that it's not the clear-cut answer that you would have expected, Daniel.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, Daniel, let us know if you want a little bit more on your question. But then I think we have time for one last question, and it almost takes us back to, I think, your the first question that we asked where you let us think about like how regularly do we think about how we think, and that's kind of stuck in my head a little throughout this presentation as well. And I was wondering if you could maybe share with maybe the few of us or the many of us who don't do it so regularly, what's something practical that we can already start doing tomorrow that's quite small to just start working on the skill to think about how we think. Because when I hear it, it seems pretty simple. And then when I try to think about how do I think about how I think, I don't really know where to start.
Mm-hmm. The easy escape route here would like get a coach and have them hold you accountable and have the session in the calendar. The other one is I generally block time in my calendar, and it's can be 30 minutes. And then I have 3 questions in there. Sometimes I change the questions, 2 or 3. I sometimes answer only one. One of the questions, and they're not necessarily like, I don't know, golden questions or this is what you should ask, right? So it's just a set of questions that generally make me think. Like, for example, what took you by surprise this week, right? Like what happened that took you by surprise? What's something that challenged one of your values, right? Like, what are you satisfied about? What are you not satisfied about, right? Like, and then I have a list of questions, right? Because coaches have lots of questions that they prepare, right? And I kind of eat my own dog food, so to speak. So I take some of those random questions after these base, right? And try and go through it. It's like a self-interview, so to speak, right? And sometimes nothing might come out of it, right? Like, I don't know, and it's on the back burner, right? But it's the actual action of taking time to think about it, right, that trains this muscle. And with time, you just get good about not only answering these questions, but catching the events as they happen. So catching something like, I wasn't expecting that. Wait a minute, that's for the session this week. I can add it to there, right? And talk with myself about it. Yeah.
Okay, well, that is really very practical advice. I'll try and do that as well, or I will do it. You shouldn't just always try. But John, thanks, Alex. I think that was super interesting. Like I probably would have sat here and listened to you until like 7 or 8 or something. So that was really great. Thank you. Yeah, I know. Letting you off the hook now with no more questions. But just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I hope during the rest of this week, all of us will try to find spaces to think about how we're thinking and to help the people that we might be managing to also think about how they're thinking, and just rewatch this video if you need to and trigger some more thoughts as well. Thank you so much for sharing it with us, Alex. Yeah,
my pleasure. Thanks as well for having me, and thanks everyone for tuning in and listening to the talk. Hopefully it was useful.
Definitely was. Thanks, everyone.